Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Blacklist, Season 10, Episode 18. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, Red is trying to bring an end to a 30-year blood feud that's going on between these two families. And they finally met kind of like to have peace talks and kind of bury the hatchet. But the problem is when they're over drinks and food, I was like, the moment you're seeing this situation, you're like, oh, somebody's about to drop dead or something because like somebody's about to get poisoned. It's like, well, because he's drinking a different alcohol than the rest of them. And it's like, because he's even like, yo, if I was going to poison you, like, he's like, I'm not trying to poison you. I'm trying not to poison myself. So that's why I'm drinking something a little differently. He was kind of joking in that regard. But then he dies, and then Home Dude's brother dies. And you're like, wait, they were drinking two different things. I was like, well, was it the food? And Reddington immediately recognizes this as the work of Wormwood. Basically, he turns your allergens against you. Basically, any form of allergen that might exist in your body, he heightens it and basically turns your immune system against you. It makes, like, obviously one of the people later on dies because there's like a condition where you can, I guess, die from like human touch. And yeah, it just exasperates it and makes it like extremely lethal. Even the most mild allergic reactions will now kill you because now they become deadly. And one by one, people start dropping until like there's only one person left on each side. Kind of like the younger generation of each respective family is the only ones left now. It sucks that it's kind of come down to this. And I love that Herbie kind of got brought in because he was like, no. Why would I want to be in the middle of trying to stop a deadly kind of pathogen situation? I know this doesn't fall into that category, probably like a pathogen, but you know, just for the sake of everything, why am I going to dive deeply into something deadly like this and in the middle of like a blood feud between two crime families? But Herbie ends up being there. And I love that apparently he's part of a book club and that they're reading Dune, which I think, I wonder, is it like the first Dune? Because I did not know this until, because I know like obviously, I think it's the first book is being adapted into like the movie we got before, and then the second Dune movie is going to be like the other half of the book. But I think there's like, isn't there like 16, maybe even 30 books in that series? It's like a long series, which is kind of bananas in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, Herbie ends up referencing it, and then like someone pops up and she's like, oh, she's knowledgeable with it. Because at first, like, Wrestler thought he was talking about Romeo and Juliet, but it's like, no, Dune. And even going as far as saying like, yeah, George Lucas basically stole the Jedi from Dune, you know, the author of who wrote Dune. But then he meets this lady who it's like, oh, she knows the Dune books and she just happens to be there. She's part of these families. And then eventually when she's texting someone later on, you're like, she's a part of this. Especially when Reddington made a whole point of, I've always dealt with like having to recognize a woman's gaze, whether or not it's of love or loathing, and being able to kind of distinguish between the two has always been important to me. And he made such a note about that with Gabriella that I was like, what's that all about? Turns out she's the one responsible for this. This is, because I guess there's beauty, but I mean, that's also like, there's tragedy in what is the Romeo and Juliet story. And this is an even more twisted version of the Romeo and Juliet story because she was determined to be with the man that she loves, Michael, but they're from opposite families and they'd never be together. So for her, it's like, I'm going to bump off everyone on both sides. Anyone that's going to stand in my way in my family or his family that could get in the way of our love, I'm going to bump them off. Michael wasn't supposed to be there. It was supposed to be the other guy, the guy who ended up dying at like his hotel or whatever when Dembe and Sia went to go arrest him or deal with him. He ended up dying. And so it's like, Michael showed up in his place. So it's like, oh, geez. So the whole point was to put him in position. It's like, right, you're supposed to be the new person that take over. Like, once you've taken over, you aren't like them. You want peace so that we can be together. So I wanted to do that. But the most heartbreaking thing for Michael is like, right, I can't be with you because, you know, she's like, you're basically, because she was like, you're not like the others, but he's like, you are. But she's like, no, I'm not. He's like, no, you're right. you're worse. The fact that she did this, like, once again, it's like, it's not, at least in the blood feud, we only go after the other people in the families. You went after your own family in the process too. Like that, like I said, this love was so twisted and contorted, her desire for it, and she went down such a dark route. I'd make the argument this is even more depressing and even more tragic than the Romeo and Juliet thing. It's sad and twisted, but at least they died together. I mean, not really. It's like, well, Romeo thought Juliet died, so he ended up drinking the poison. She wakes up and finds out he'd actually killed himself, so she stabs herself. So it's like, on some level, maybe they found their way back to each other in some form of the afterlife or whatever. But it's like, nah, the woman you were in love with, you find out is completely another psycho who killed your family and her own family just for the sake of trying to be with you. It's like, you're not the person I thought you were. The fact is you fit in this family too damn well, because he was willing to like bury the hatchet, because for him it's like, there's been back and forth, but I'm willing to lay that all down, because like the other dude on the other side was kind of like, no, I need to know proof. But the moment he found it, because Gabriella's his cousin, it's like the moment he's like, well, that can't be. Even Michael's like, no, there's no way she couldn't be. It's like, it is sad that this story is played out this way. It's like, wow, makes this whole situation that much more tragic. Once again, it's like, love can be just as deadly, maybe even more potent and deadly as any hate. That the poison, because it's all a byproduct of like her desperation for her love is a byproduct of the poisonous hate that's run in these families for 3 generations. But it's like, right, her love to counter that hate ended up being a poison all on its own, and it's sad that things kind of played out that way. But both of them, the last people standing of the families, members who showed up for this get together, end up like trying to put things aside, because it's like, right, knowing it was like, hey, it was one of our own that did this. It was my cousin, and also the reason why she did it too. It makes it a tragic thing of like, how do we find a way forward? It's just like, we just kind of just sit, talk, eat, drink, and just like figure that out after the fact. So that's definitely going to be interesting. But it seems like that blood feud is done, because Red does want to, he's trying to, well, for one, he's like, hey, at the end of the day, we caught a blacklister because they caught Wormwood. He was like, oh, I didn't get into this business to save lives. I got into this business to make money and become famous. But then he ended up making something that only kills and not really saves lives. So he stayed at that place so he could easily make it. And obviously he sold his services to other people. I love when they were like, right, oh, you don't want to help us. Well, one of the people you poison is Reddington, and we could put you in lockup for, a day, maybe a week, or maybe put you in an FBI black site, and maybe you'd be safe for Reddington. But it's like, hey, you should be congratulating me. Person on the most wanted list, I killed them. It's like, shut up, dude. I'm sure Red would be all congratulatory for you, being like, hey, trying to bump me off and stuff like that. So, but it turns out that it's also twisted too. It's one of those, it almost feels like an Alice in Borderland twist. If you know what I'm talking about, where like some of the games in Alice in Borderland, it's like, right, you think they're one thing, but they end up being something else entirely. It kind of felt like that, where he's like, oh yeah, like all you have to do basically to survive this, there is no actual cure. The cure is basically you process it through your liver and you piss it out. That's how you survive it. You just have to stay in a sterile enough room where you won't run into anything that could activate it. I mean, hell, breathing in air because you don't know what's in the air, because it could be something like a pollen or whatever in the air. Obviously human touch could end up being the undoing, just because, hey, maybe there's something in the moisturizer that this person's wearing. It's like literally anything you touch, taste, or run into or breathe in could end up killing you. So it's just like, and Red was willing to take that chance because he ended up bailing before he had enough time for it to work out of his system, because he had an appointment to keep. And the moment you hear him talking about keeping an appointment, you immediately know it's about Agnes, especially when you hear about like, oh yeah, put something in your shoes to help you because she has a ballet performance, and he made sure to be there. And even later, I love Harold being like, what do you think you're doing? And I love where it's like, whoa, it's really brave of you to kind of break into my place, Harold. And he's like, all the times you break into mine, he's like, yeah, but I lean on like how calm your demeanor is and stuff like that. I think it's kind of wrong of you to kind of lean on mine, because you know how I'm a little, nervous and got a little itchy trigger finger when, people just like randomly breaking in here, which is like, right. He still didn't I don't think Dembe ever told Harold that obviously the person that broke in was Weecha and that whole rigmarole. I don't think that ever got found out. But either way, Harold's wondering why Reddington is willing to take the risk, and for him, it's like Agnes is worth that risk, you know? Because he had even said it to Gabriella. It's like, well, the thing is, I'm not afraid of death. He's kind of almost like, yeah, I got the devil on my side, and we'll see if he'll stick us alongside of me with this situation. He was taking quite the gamble, but even Harold's like, man, you've always been so careful about taking care of yourself, never like always being peering around every corner, never kind of rolling deep. But now it's like you have been so careless lately because Red doesn't care as much about his life. But Harold was saying like, right, you aren't just an associate of mine. You are a dear friend. You are someone I care about. And Agnes cares about you too. So you need to be more careful because you need to be around for her. But it is that thing of, I guess it's almost going to be this inverse of things with Liz. Red wasn't in Liz's life for most of her life. And, you know, got these past couple years with her. So maybe Red's trying to almost do the opposite where it's like, hey, I'm here in these couple years of your life. And then I'm going to eventually be going because, once again, I don't know if Red knows that he's sick again. And it's like, I've only got a certain amount of time. So I'm trying to make the most of it. I want to make these memories last. And aren't they worth any risk that might come to me? Because it's like, I want to, you know, especially because holding on to Agnes, memories of Agnes is kind of almost not fully, but it's almost making up for the history of not being able to be there for Liz. You know, you kept eyes and touch on Liz, but you were always so distant. Now you can be upfront and like more hands-on with Agnes. So another angle to the episode, which kind of threw me by surprise. I kept bringing it up, like, I don't trust this Jonathan dude. And so I think it's so funny that this episode, all my fears about him end up coming true in this episode, but not in the capacity I thought. Because I kept being like, right, we haven't met his wife, Jill. All this stuff with Jonathan is happening off screen. And I'm like, is this guy legit or was he a plant in Donald's life? But I'm like, no, now that all of the Wu Jing stuff is dealt with, I'm like, because I thought maybe he was a plant by Wu Jing, but it turned out he's not. So I was like, okay, so maybe he is legit. And the moment I start thinking that, I'm like, oh, maybe he is legit, boom, Arthur gets his hands on him because it's like, right, because he unraveled a lot of stuff because fine, that one name is all he needed. All he needed was Dembe Zuma's name, and that ended up kind of cracking open the case. Like, obviously, he's got a lot right, but he doesn't have the full context to everything. Context doesn't matter, even if it's a thing of like, hey, Red is giving them names to take down some very bad people. They're still working with the FBI's most wanted criminal, and he's also, there is precedent of, hey, he's also managed to take advantage of these circumstances and profit from it. But to be fair, there is no, I mean, that's going to be the double-edged sword of like, hey, we know you're working with Red, but there's actually no immunity deal in place because he kind of like screwed all of that on their computer system. So we'll see if that ends up being a good thing or a bad thing. But like I said, he didn't want anyone like Wu Jing getting close again. And now that Arthur's kind of tiptoeing in that direction, that still could be like a nail in a coffin for the task force in many different capacities. I don't know. It's definitely going to be interesting to see because I think when he unearths a lot of stuff about, because Sia's kind of put to bed all the stuff with her mom, but that might all come to the surface too the moment Arthur starts digging up everything about everyone. So, because now he's using Jonathan to go after Donald. Because, hey, Donald's mixed up in something bad, and this is your friend, this is someone you care about, like you're both helping keep each other sober. You want to be there to help him. If you don't believe me about all this, ask him about Elizabeth Keene. It's like, oh, she shot the Attorney General. It's like, yeah, but the Attorney General wasn't a good guy. I was like, is that still the thing of like, right, no one knows that he was wasn't he part of the cabal that they end up going toe-to-toe with? Because that ended up being like the main thing of like, wasn't it season 3 and season 4? I know Christine Lottie's character was part of that cabal and connected in that regard. I think that was a season 3 storyline, but I believe that was like a season 2, 3, and 4 storyline. But I guess like no one knows about that except for like the squad. Actually, it's been so long, I'm like, how did they fully rectify the whole her killing an attorney general situation? I don't remember how they like rectified that situation, but it's like, yeah, he wasn't a good guy. He was a bad guy. He was a criminal. He did something and Liz had to pull the trigger on him for whatever reason. And it's kind of like she kind of screwed the pooch on that. But like I said, it's been so long because I don't remember. Like, if you want to like remind me, or if I end up doing it on my own, or if you want to like correct me in the comments, like do hit me up and let me know about like what was the circumstances around that because I don't remember. So there's that, but it's also like Liz wasn't the bad person. In fact, I mean, let's not forget her final season was her doing everything she can to take down Reddington. They're trying to paint her as like, oh, this bad person, and she was on the run with Reddington. It's like, yeah, but she was a good agent. She took down a lot of very bad people, and that's going to be the problem when Donald finds out, because Jonathan's going to be helping like tarnish Liz's legacy. So that's also a thing too, because her daughter's still around too to have to live with like that legacy. So, but Jonathan wanted to try and hear from Donald himself to find out whether there was truth to what Arthur said. And it's like, right, he brought up Liz, and it's like, right, after she died, like there's something, because I think in his mind it's like, right, Donald's like sipped the Kool-Aid, the evil Kool-Aid, and he's a part of this situation. So it's like, right, he was in love with, he told me her name because it's like, right, because Donald can tell him like Liz, because it's like, right, we don't really, so not supposed to know enough about each other's lives like that. You know, they're private for a reason, and now it's kind of being used against them. And Arthur got the person he wanted. And the problem is, Arthur's not even thinking of, because Jonathan's a means to an end. This is going to send him spiraling eventually, and he will probably like eventually overdose. And that's going to be on Arthur's shoulders. His need to try and take down this task force, push someone too far, someone who's not in a good position, especially because Donald has become his foundation, and that betrayal is probably going to weigh on him. So we'll see whether he ends up getting a lot of information out of Donald. But the moment he starts asking too many questions, Donald's going to start getting suspicious. It might be a thing of, hey, I don't know you. Hey, I'm going to open up to you because it's going to help with your sobriety. Or maybe it's just going to be because that could definitely, like, that hurt and pain and feeling like you're betraying someone can send someone like Jonathan like spiraling, and I think it will. So that's going to be on Arthur. Like, that was just a development I wasn't expecting. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how that ultimately all plays out. We're down to the wire. 4 episodes left. Only 4 episodes left. It feels weird to be at this point that we've only got 4 episodes of the Blacklist. It feels mad, man. It feels so mad to think we're like, it's crazy that we're at this point. It's just like, how this all plays out over the next couple episodes is going to be so fascinating to see what the next episode takes us, and what we are narrowing down to the finale. So it's going to be interesting to see where all this ends up taking us. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.